All right, here we are, Britney Carrington, coach extraordinaire. We're on the call tonight with Wrestling Philosophy. Brittany, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Great, great. So what I wanted to do, I want to give you an opportunity in a long format to tell your story. You're so involved in the sport of wrestling, especially in Ohio, but even at the national level, that you know, I just want to give a format for you to so that people when they see you know who you are, number one, but also to tell your story and then of course be a resource to everybody that might be out there. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's start this way. Tell us how you became involved in the sport of wrestling because you actually weren't a wrestler, right?
Correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I grew up in a community that was like a D1 basketball powerhouse community. So I played basketball growing up. That's all we did was just basketball, basketball, basketball. Kind of like it is now with wrestling, but back then it was, basketball or volleyball or both. But for me, it was just basketball, and we did club basketball, rec basketball, all the basketball. So back then it was AAU ball, and I traveled all over doing that, and that was kind of my thing. And unfortunately, things just didn't pan out for me in high school. I should have been a first generation collegiate athlete, but the reality was is like I let an injury and some just real dumb stuff get in the way between me and my goals, and that was to be a collegiate athlete. Obviously, had I known now, or had I known then what I know now, things would be different. But wrestling wasn't around. My high school boyfriend wrestled, and that was the extent of my knowledge. It didn't go past that. It wasn't anything but a stat opportunity for women at the time. So that was definitely not an option. But I went on to start my life and left sports in the dust kind of after high school and just turned my back on it. I was honestly kind of mad at sports at that point. I dealt with a lot of burnout. I was a part of the generation that was just crazy about specialization. So once I really decided that I wanted to stick to basketball, that was it. And so it was like 10 years of solid basketball, no summers off. You know what I mean? It was just basketball year round, year in and year out. So by the time college and starting adulthood rolled around, I was over it. I was ready to move on, ready to find out who I was as a person, and ultimately ended up starting my family. And then when I had my oldest daughter, it's pretty apparent to me that sports would be making a comeback in my life. Um, I didn't really understand the magnitude at the time, but the reality was is that she was super competitive, and I wanted to be back out there with her at any capacity, whatever my kids were interested in. And that just happened to be martial arts and wrestling. So really, in order for me to feel comfortable coaching, I felt like I needed somewhat of a background, like with some sort of grappling. And I happened to be really into jujitsu, and June had just started training. So I started training privately a little bit with someone that I trusted a lot, someone that I could tell about all my worries and my insecurities. And I put all that to the side on the mat because I had an instructor that actually cared about my emotional relationship with being on the mat versus just another body in the grappling gym. They really wanted me to fall in love with the sport. So I fell in love with jiu-jitsu first when June was really little. And that just blew over into coaching youth wrestling, which kind of snowballed into coaching middle school wrestling, and then the Greenview High School program, which, as we know, is an incredible program. The Southwest District champs this year. So kudos to them for having a awesome program. But
They just took fourth, right?
Fourth at the state
tournament.
Yes.
With only a handful of girls going there. Total hammers.
Yep. Absolutely awesome. Really, really proud of them. So that was my first high school program coaching there. And then from there, just another opportunity presented itself at CJ Chaminade Julienne in downtown Dayton, Ohio. So my family relocated back home the first summer of COVID. And it was at that point that I really started I guess, branding myself and looking for other opportunities. And that's when CJ knocked on my door, and that really led to more opportunities being back home in Dayton. My family's from Dayton, so coming home was really big for me, having that support to really get some work done here locally. And so once I moved home, that kind of just led me to more like grassroots type of coaching, I guess you want to say, just really looking at how I can reach and access more girls that don't have the opportunity to be involved with wrestling in Dayton, Ohio. It was really alarming to me that being in a city that I had so few coaches in the suburbs supporting wrestling, even on the 675 loop, there's only a couple of coaches that are really, really supporting women's wrestling. And you can see them because they're at the state tournament. You know what I mean? So just looking at how I can reach even other local coaches and how I can, just like we were talking about earlier, spreading the good word. And women's wrestling is awesome and it's here to stay. So I've kind of been on a mission of that since I moved home to Dayton, through my own high school program, our own club, through beach wrestling. The Sanction Ohio efforts really took off in the last 18 months. Vanessa Oswald and Brian doing an incredible job up in Columbus, just really hammering down all those fine details for the last year. I mean, it's been nothing but meetings and just threading that needle and trying to get the movement going in the right direction, and having to deal with all of us angry coaches. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine what they went through, but just really trying to get my hands involved with a lot of these efforts here in Ohio. So that's the kind of the quick rundown of how I got involved.